This is Nathaniel, author of A Sergeant's War and the upcoming Off-World, which is what we're going to be discussing today. Off-World is the science fiction version of my World War II rule set. I've made some fairly significant changes to the rules to accommodate fast-moving forces, high-tech stuff. I hope that it's going to end up being a fun, quick-play game that people can enjoy. We're just going to do a little quick game today to show people the general mechanics of the game. We have this force, the Kyushin Armed Forces. That's 2 squads and a machine gun team up on the top of the structure there. And over here are the United Nations forces. 2 squads plus an element of special forces guys. Higher quality troops. Okay, we'll give the Kyushins the first turn. They are good troops. Here are the stats. Both sides are pretty capable troops. You have quality and morale. Quality affects mainly shooting, but a few other things as well. Firepower, that's how many dice you roll when you shoot at a target. The firefights, that's when you get in close to the enemy. Most of these guys have no modifications for that, except for the special forces guys. You know, +1, we'll get to that later. And everybody's armor and the other special rules is all equal for this game. These are all regular troops with basic stuff. Okay, game's measured in inches. There are no visible targets at the beginning. So at the beginning of the turn, you have a fire phase, one of your 2 optional fire phases. No targets for the Kyushin forces, so we'll get moving. Regular infantry move 8 inches. You move by the unit, not by the individual, so you can just pick up the unit and move it. It's not a big deal. I don't get terribly fussy about exactly where troops move. These guys will go 8 inches as well. Now the 2 maneuver elements for the Kyushins are 4 men each. This last guy here, that's the Kyushin squad leader. In Off-World, like in A Sergeant's War, the World War II version, your squad leaders are very important. They have a big role to play in the game. So that's the Kyushin's first move. We'll come over here now to the United Nations forces, the United Nations of Earth and Mars. The fluff that I will include in the game is totally optional. So if you don't want insufferable gamer fluff to interfere with your game, then you don't have to. You can ignore it and substitute your own. Alright, we'll move troops up into the structure. It means we're going to have line of sight with the enemy now. Now, normally when you move within line of sight of the enemy, that triggers the possibility of enemy defensive fire, reaction fire. But because they're moving up into solid cover, and they began outside of enemy line of sight, it will not trigger defensive fire. The squad leader is going to stay right over here next to the 2 units so that he can affect them if he wants to. Now a little special forces team is going to sneak around somewhere in the vicinity of my gigantic hand and see if they can flank around the Kyushin positions. Now after you get done moving, you have a second optional fire phase. You can fire in the first or the second. If you moved, you fire at a penalty. The United Nations troops are going to open up. Concentrating your fire is always a good idea in war games, so they're going to both fire at the same target over here. Firepower is 3. That means each unit generates 3 firepower dice. The quality of these 2 forces is the same. The United Nations and the Kyushin troops are quality 4. So that means the basic 2 hit number is a 3 or better. However, the United Nations troops moved, which is a -1, and the Kyushins over there behind that wall of schmutz or whatever that is are in cover, so that's a -2. We're rolling all of our attacks against the same target. The squad leader plays no role, he doesn't add any firepower. Any modified roll of 3+ with a -2 penalty is a hit, so that's only 1 hit. The Kyushins take this 1 hit, and first they take a casualty test. If they were to have rolled a 1, that'd be a casualty. No casualty. Then they take a morale test. You roll 1 dice for every hit, and 1 dice for every casualty. Well, they only took 1 hit, so they roll 1 dice. Look, that's cocked, so we'll roll again. They rolled a 2. Their morale is a 4, so they need a 4 higher. 1 failure means 1 pinned marker. Now the Kyushins over here have a squad leader. It's the guy, he's close enough to them. The squad leader can try to lead from the front to re-roll a failed morale test. He's going to do that. His second roll was a 3 or higher, which is all you need for a squad leader, and he passed it. Had he rolled a 1, no, like that. Had he rolled a 1, the squad leader would have been hit, representing that he jumps up to encourage his troops to keep fighting, and he gets noticed and he gets hit by enemy fire. And then the unit would, not get to pass that morale test. So the Kyushins are otherwise unaffected. That's the end of the UN turn, so we'll go back over to the Kyushins. Now we have Buku targets all over the place. The machine gun up top, I think we'll fire on that section, and this element will fire on that section, because this element I got ideas. And the machine gun team has firepower 4. Targets in cover, so it's a -1 penalty. We're looking for 3s or higher to hit with a -1 modifier. So that's 3 misses and 1 hit. Stack the little hit dice next to the target. We'll roll for all of their effects later. These guys are going to fire on that section. 3 dice. 1 hit. Now we'll go through and test for casualties first. On a 1, casualty. Nope, no casualty. Now morale test. They only got hit by 1 round. That's a failure. I think the UN troops are just going to suck up that failure and take 1 little morale pip. I'm in the process of trying to figure out nice attractive ways of marking statuses rather than using little counters. So for now we're using little puffs of smoke to indicate troops pinned down. The other section also fails, so we'll take 1 little. My squad leader, I've decided I don't want to try to do anything fancy. Movement phase. This Kyushin section is going to try to scoot over here. Now, while they move through this open space, each of these elements, they have line of sight to it, can attempt defensive fire. Defensive fire works thusly. These 2 squads have basic 3 firepower. They're pinned, so we cut that in half, rounding up. So now they only have basic 2 firepower. Against a single enemy movement, you may use up to half of your firepower in defensive fire. So each of these units will only get a single shot. But we merge it together, we roll twice, that's 1 hit, no casualty, but then we take a morale test. They took the 1 hit from being out in the open. He's not dead, he just got knocked over. They took 1 hit, but they were in the open, which gives them an extra hit. They passed both of them, so they made it into that piece of cover without any trouble. They're now going to use their second fire phase to fire over here. That's 2 hits. Target takes its morale casualty test, no casualty, and then morale test, no failed morale. So that's the end of the turn for the Kyushins. Now for the UN troops. First thing, we try to remove pinned markers. You just pass a morale test. That's removed. Their morale's 4+. And that's removed. All right. Shooting phase. Okay. Let's light them up. They're going to use all their fire over here. We need a 3 or better with a -1 because they're in cover. So that means, ouch, 3 hits over here, 2 hits over here. Casualty tests. No casualties for them, but we leave the dice there because we're going to come back for morale. No casualties over here. Morale test. Get 3 checks because they took 3 hits. Oh, all 3 failed. The Kyushin squad leader's all the way over here, so he can't affect it. These guys retreat. Full move, broken. Run away, run away. With a little broken marker on them. This section failed 1 test. I'm kind of nervous about the proximity of these special forces guys, so my squad leader is going to re-roll that failed test. He came up with a 5, so they're not pinned down. Okay. That's pretty successful. We chased off one of the Kyushin squads. Movement. These guys are going to move up into this building with the intent of starting a firefight. They're within 4 inches. They're within 4 inches of an enemy. Firefights represent assaults, short-range fire, and grenades. However, to get into an assault, first you have to defeat enemy defensive fire. Now normally, remember, defensive fire can only use up to half of its dice. In this case, because these guys came through here, they're basically masked by these guys, so the supporting machine gun can't fire defensively. These guys can fire defensively. Because the Special Forces troops ended within 4 inches, they can use all of their firepower, not just half of it. So first, defensive fire. Now the Special Forces guys, they're quality 3. That means they're actually better. That was the cat, in case you heard them meowing. The Special Forces troops are actually better than the Kyushin troops. So that means the basic 2-hit roll for the Kyushins is 4 or better. These guys, they don't get the benefit of the cover because if you're starting a firefight, it's assumed that some of your troops at least are moving out in the open. So we rolled a hit. Ooh, 3 hits. Ouch. Now this guy within the Special Forces section counts as the squad leader, is a leader, so we'll see how he affects it. No casualties. That's the casualty test. Now a morale test. Their morale is a 4, so that means that they've failed 2 of their checks. The squad leader wants this attack to go through. Up. Both of them, he re-rolled both. They both pass, and the squad leader's not a casualty. So they're not pinned down. Now we get to the assault, or to the firefight. In a firefight, you roll 1 dice per model in the fight. So the Special Forces guys get 3, plus 1 for being aggressive Special Forces types, versus 4 for the Kyushins. This cover, this strip of wall here, is not enough to affect the fight. You're just rolling a straight up hit, 2-hit roll. The Kyushins need 4s or better. It's a pretty vicious attack there. Special Forces guys, they're better quality troops. They need 3 or better. They only scored 2 hits. Now it's important to keep track how many hits have been scored. The Kyushins inflicted 3. The Special Forces guys inflicted 2. Kyushins, or the Special Forces guys, take their casualty test. They took 3 hits. In firefights, casualties happen on 1s and 2s, not just 1s. So that's 1 casualty amongst the Special Forces. For the other guys, 2 casualties for the Kyushin troops. Now we determine who won. We count up the number of points that you scored. The Kyushins scored more hits because they inflicted 3 hits, and the Special Forces only inflicted 1. So that counts as 1 point for the Kyushins. The Special Forces guys suffered 1 casualty, so that's 1 point for the Kyushins. So the Kyushins have 2 points. We'll keep track with dice there. The Special Forces guys, they inflicted 2 casualties. They killed 2 Kyushins. So they get 2 points. Now in the case of a tie, because this is a tie, we have 2 points for each side. You go through a kind of a multi-step process, but the first step is who has the higher morale rating. They're both the same. Who has the better quality rating? The Special Forces guys are 3s. The Kyushins are 4s, so that means that the Special Forces have higher quality, so they win the tie. When you win in a combat, the losing unit takes a morale test. I rolled a 5 right on the rooftop. That's pretty slick. That means that they retreat but are not broken. So they retreat. The squad leader is going to go with them. If the Special Forces want to, they can try to occupy the space. I'm not that interested in moving out there outside the building, so we're going to stay where we were. Casualties tend to be much heavier in firefights than they are in ranged combat. That's pretty much all of the standard rules for the game. You know, the infantry movement, defensive fire, ranged attacks, and close range firefights. You got to see how a squad leader can push his troops forward, a unit breaking and running, troops becoming pinned down. So I think that gives you a pretty good idea of the flavor of the game and the basic way that units move and fire. I'm going to try to post more of these short videos to explain the main core mechanics of the game. And of course we'll also put up numerous more photographic after action reports so you can see whole games in progress with descriptions. Thanks a lot for watching. The buildings out here, these ones are by Black Ronin Games, very colorful. These are free ones off the internet. I'll try to post. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he does cool little buildings. That's Scratch Build. These guys are Adzil Azmi, probably pronouncing that wrong. Nova Vistula Legion. special forces by the same company. And the other guys, the enemy troops, the Kyushins, are Rebel Mini Sahadin, intended, I think, as desert troops, but I've painted them up as though they're in sort of woodland camouflage because of the fluff setting that I have for them. They're actually manning over here. This machine gun is actually a Adzil Azmi machine gun. Okay, thanks for watching again. Bye.